holy crap, Sonic Forces. The hype is real. I mean, seriously, just listen to this music. But let's get serious, because this game's plot is, well, it's actually kind of depressing. Why? Because in Sonic Forces, Eggman has won. This is evident based on the trailer alone, and the few accounts of how the first level progresses, more than was shown in the official gameplay video, confirm it. The question is then, how? We know that there's been a game in between Sonic Generations and Sonic Forces, Sonic Lost World, but I'm here to present a little bit of a different take on the whole scenario. Hello Internet, this is MattCast, coming at you with another episode of Theory Hour, where today I'm going to explain how Sonic Lost World is an alternate timeline caused by the time-splitting effects in Sonic Generations, and therefore while Eggman remained the continuous loser in Lost World, in the Forces timeline he beat Sonic and managed to conquer the world. Sega has definitively stated that Forces is not a sequel to Generations multiple times. However, to bypass this, let's use a comparison to another similar case. One could say the same thing about Sonic Generations, that it's not a sequel to Sonic Colors, the game before it. Those two were connected, however, by the fact that Eggman's scheme in Generations was the result of the aftermath of his defeat in Colors. So the takeaway that I have from that is to look for connecting factors in between Sonic Generations and Sonic Forces. Let's take a quick look and... well, would you look at that? There is a connecting factor, Classic Sonic. Oh, I should probably mention here that I'm not saying Sega was lying about Force's non-sequel status. I think they were telling the truth, but in a way that would cause confusion, so as to throw people off the trail of what's really going on. But what about Lost World, I hear you say? It was released in between Generations and Forces. It must take place in between the two, so Forces can't be a continuation of Generations. And you'd be right. But I have a way around that. After all, this isn't just your average theory show. This is Theory Hour. I'm like gosh dang Socrates here. I specialize in making the weaker argument the stronger. We can firmly establish that in order for Forces to have a connection with Generations, Lost World can't be in the Forces timeline. But how? Well, this is where the alternate timelines theory comes into play. The game right before Generations was Sonic Colors, so let's use that as the game where the timeline split. And know that that isn't just an arbitrary decision, it'll make a little more sense why I chose that point when I explain the conclusion it reaches. So if we say the timeline split occurred during the climax of Colors, making it a pivot point where Eggman either wins or loses, then it makes perfect sense for Lost World to happen as it does, since it's the timeline where Eggman loses. He, expelled into space, manages to find his way down to Earth, above which he then discovers the Lost Hex, the setting of Lost World, and enslaves the native Zeddy. But say he defeats Sonic during the climax of Colors, and Sonic doesn't die from the black hole thing and gets back to Earth. Somehow. I don't really see how that could happen, but I know that for the sake of continuing the series, Sega has basically given Sonic plot armor, so I'll just use that as the explanation and move on. Eggman, while his space station is destroyed, still has the upper hand while Sonic is defeated for the moment, and he quickly launches an attack on Earth with all his available forces, conquering it easily now that its hero has fallen. I just realized that if Eggman used all his available forces, then that could explain the title Sonic Forces. Haha, I didn't notice that when writing this, but that would be clever if it was right. This timeline split would be the perfect way for Sega to establish a connection between Generations and Forces without having to retcon Lost World in the process. It's not that Lost World is wrong and Forces is right, or vice versa, they're just two different yet equally true timelines. But what caused the timeline split? I've been using it as my explanation this whole time, but why would it exist in the first place? And how is Generations not retconned because of it? If I'm claiming that Lost World and Forces both follow directly from Colors, then how does Generations fit in? Well, let's find out. The ending events of Generations are extremely problematic. The classic characters return to their proper time and all, but the two Eggmans are still stuck in the void. The question becomes, how did they get out? Well, my claim is that they didn't. At least not on their own. See, during the game the Time Eater was there to hold the universe together in its paradoxical state. However, at the end the Time Eater is gone, completely destroyed. So how can the universe still exist when classic Eggman is stuck in the void? That would necessarily dictate that modern Eggman can't exist due to a version of the grandfather paradox, wherein if the past version of Eggman is put into the void by the modern version would cease to exist, and therefore couldn't have put his past self into the void. The answer to how the universe can still exist with this paradox is that the universe can't still exist. What I propose is that what we see at the end of Sonic Generations is the last few moments before the fractured universe begins to piece itself back together the only way it can, basically doing a universe-scale Control-Z and rewinding time back to before the cause of the fractures happened, before Eggman found the Time Eater. And finally, to prevent the fractures from ever occurring in the first place, it changed the events that caused Eggman to find the Time Eater, splitting the timeline in two alternate versions. One where Eggman finds the Lost Hex, and one where he wins and conquers the world. And that's basically the theory. It has a few things I still can't explain, like how classic Sonic got into forces, but I'm sure those things will all work themselves out. Huh? Speak of the devil. New Sonic Forces gameplay! And it's classic Sonic! Hang on a second while I watch this. Yeah? Uh-huh. Whoa, that's some killer acceleration. I like it. The music's jamming too. Well, doesn't seem like there's much new except for the gray robots in the sand. Wait. Rewind. Was that the drop dash? Boys, I think we have a part 2 on our hands.